The night hangs over the Giza Plateau like a silent equation, half dream, half memory. Wind curls along the limestone blocks, whispering through joints so precise they barely let time breathe. No body was ever found here, no trace of a funeral, no inscription naming a king. Just stone perfectly cut, perfectly aligned, waiting for someone to ask why. They called it a tomb because they needed it to be something human. But every surface resists that word. The air inside carries no smoke of ritual, no pigment of ceremony, only an unbroken hum, a tone the desert seems to remember. Under the first light of dawn, the shadows fall exactly north, exactly south. The pyramid does not point, it listens. It listens to the earth's spin, to the slow sigh of magnetism moving under sand. Somewhere beneath the aquifer still stirs, sending up tiny vibrations that no ear can hear. The ancients may have known how to read these murmurs, to measure with silence instead of rulers. Each block becomes a pulse, each angle a breath. And in that breath, something older than kings is encoded, a rhythm built not for prayer, but for resonance. So what if this monument was never meant to guard a soul, but to awaken one ours when we finally remember how to listen? The sand shifts softly. The air waits. The pyramid remains unspeaking, yet alive, as if it is still waiting for the right frequency to be heard. Rain once fell on these stones, not the brief desert drizzle of modern Egypt, but a slow, persistent rain ancient enough to carve the limestone and soften its edges. The walls of the Sphinx still bear the grooves of that forgotten weather, deep vertical scars, that whisper of a time when the Sahara was green. No chronicle remembers that world, yet the stone remembers. It holds in silence the echo of storms older than dynasties, older perhaps than humanity's memory of itself. The plateau of Giza rises from that drowned past, a terrace between worlds, the desert above the buried river below. From here, the horizon widens into the kind of geometry that only the sky can draw. At night, the three great pyramids align not by accident, but by intention, mirroring the three stars of Orion's belt. Al-Nitak al-Nilam, Mintaka. 3 points of light mapped perfectly upon the sand, as though the builders meant to pull the heavens down into stone. Ancient texts called Orion the realm of Osiris, the gateway of rebirth, but maybe that was only the myth that survived after the science was lost. Perhaps these alignments were not prayers to gods, but calibrations to the cosmos itself, each line, each shadow traced to match the angles of constellations. A symphony written in the language of starlight. The Egyptians said, as above, so below. It sounds poetic, yet it feels more like an equation, a formula hidden in belief. Look long enough at the arrangement, and the earth begins to mirror the sky. The Milky Way becomes the Nile. The belt of Orion becomes Giza. The ancient engineers might have seen the two as one circuit the heavens, a transmitter the earth, a receiver, both singing across the ionosphere in rhythms too vast for us to measure. And when the rain ceased, when the grass turned to sand, the circuit fell silent, but not dead. Beneath the stillness, a residual hum remains faint, but constant, the afterimage of a conversation between stars and stone. Archaeologists call the weathering accidental, the alignment coincidence, the story convenient. Yet coincidences rarely stack with such precision. Each degree of orientation, each inch of displacement forms a chain of intent that defies chance. The builders did not simply place stones, they tuned them. They listened to the language of the planet and repeated it in shape. Perhaps what we call erosion is only the earth answering back. Perhaps the rain was part of the process, a cleansing or recalibration that prepared the plateau to receive its geometry. Even the erosion on the Sphinx's flank might not be damage, but signature a mark that proves how long the structure has been resonating with wind, water, and time. Imagine standing here 12,000 years ago. The Nile is a mirror of stars. Thunder rolls across grasslands. Orion hangs low and bright. The night hums with static. From a sky more charged than ours, the ionosphere dense responsive. Builders walk silently across the plateau, guided by starlight reflected in pools of water, measuring not by feet, but by vibration, aligning not to horizon, but to harmony. Each stone they lay is a note, each angle a frequency. The work is not construction, it is tuning. And somewhere, the decision is made to hide all of this in plain sight. To let the future call it myth, while the geometry waits dormant, yet alive. A monument shaped to survive floods, fires, and forgetfulness. When the last rain fell and the desert hardened, the structure sealed itself beneath the dust, holding the code of the sky in the silence of stone. Tonight, under the same stars, the belt of Orion still burns over Giza. The alignment holds true. The earth has turned, civilizations have risen and fallen, yet the correspondence remains perfect, as though the planet itself refuses to forget. The stars shift through the ages, but the pyramid endures as an anchor, a fixed memory of how once long ago the heavens spoke to the earth through the rain. And so we stand at the edge of a forgotten dialogue, listening to the desert breathe. Every grain of sand carries a remnant of that conversation. Every gust of wind across the plateau stirs the silence into motion again. It is not myth that survives here, but mathematics, asleep in stone geometry, dreaming of thunder. Maybe one day we will hear it again, the soft electrical murmur that once joined the stars to the sand. For now, all we can do is stand still, let the night wash over us, and wonder what melody the ancients left behind when they built the earth in the image of the sky. The plateau does not shout its secrets, it measures them. Every surface, every shadow falls into alignment so precise that it resists decay. The Great Pyramid faces true north with an error smaller than 3 arc minutes. A precision no other monument achieved until modern instruments learned to mimic the sky. It is as if the builders read the planet's pulse and pressed their structure directly into its rhythm. Stand at the base, and you can feel how it refuses chaos. Each side stretches over 200 meters, yet the angles close into perfect symmetry. 4 faces meeting at a point so subtle that even wind erosion bows around it, unwilling to disturb the balance. Beneath the sand, the foundation spreads across 13 acres of limestone, flattened to within a fraction of an inch. Such accuracy is not convenience. It is intention carved into geology. The orientation to true north implies an understanding of precession of the slow drift of the heavens across millennia. To find that alignment without a compass, the architects had to read the stars directly. Perhaps using a sighting shaft. Perhaps using a shadow at the equinox, marking the moment when Earth's rotation hummed in perfect counterpoint to light. It was not built to point. It was built to synchronize. Each block carries weight not only in mass but in measurement. Some are cut with joints so thin a human hair would barely pass between them. This is not craftsmanship for glory. It is calibration. A monument designed as a device, something that had to fit together so precisely that sound itself could travel uninterrupted through its body. The stones are not silent, they transmit. If the alignment to true north was one axis of tuning, the leveling of the foundation was the second. Across the expanse of bedrock, the variance in height is measured in millimeters. The builders likely poured water across the surface, watching for the calm horizon of stillness, marking where balance truly existed. In that act, they united geometry and gravity, creating a baseline not of belief, but of resonance. Imagine them standing in the fading light, adjusting each block by touch and tone. A hammer strike rings out, echoes fades. They listen. The sound travels down through stone and up through air, finding equilibrium between ground and sky. When the vibration hums evenly, they set the next block. No words, no prayers, just resonance. Centuries later, surveyors measured the same lines and were left puzzled. The error to true north, so tiny it mocked the limitations of bronze and rope. The corners squared within seconds of arc. The difference in base length between east and west sides, barely a human breath. Who could work to that precision, before steel, before optics, before the clock itself was born? Yet here it stands unchanged, as though the earth itself adjusted to meet it. The pyramid does not align to a king's will, but to planetary constants. True north, equatorial, curvature, gravitational balance. Each is inscribed here, silent but absolute. Even erosion respects it. Wind carves gently dust, collects softly, yet the core proportions persist. The monument and the meridian have merged. One defines the other. To walk its perimeter is to feel an equation beneath your feet. You trace not a boundary, but a waveform, 4 equal sides, enclosing a frequency of stillness. Stand at the center, and the compass needle trembles slightly, a reminder that magnetism itself bends to geometry. Perhaps that was the purpose all along, to fix the Earth's wandering fields, to hold direction steady in a world that turns endlessly. Archaeologists call it coincidence. Mathematicians call it impossible. But precision has emotion too. The quiet satisfaction of symmetry, the hum of perfect balance. That feeling reaches across time like an unbroken tone. It does not need translation. Even now, standing before the weathered face, you sense it a subtle pull, as if your heartbeat adjusts to match its pulse. In this chamber of air and stone, the north wind becomes an instrument. It slides along the edges, catches on the joints, produces a faint note that the desert barely hears. The sound wavers, then stabilizes, tracing the same direction that the stars once marked. It is the sound of orientation of a monument, still finding true north after 40 centuries of wind. Perhaps the builders wanted that. Perhaps they understood that to align something perfectly is to give it permanence. Long after language dissolves and symbols fade, precision endures. It cannot be mistranslated. It is pure relationship, earth and sky in silent agreement. When the sun sets behind the western ridge, the shadow of the pyramid stretches east, exactly east. The line passes over the plateau like a sundial drawn by gravity itself. For one moment, balance becomes visible, the world and the monument holding still together. Then the darkness deepens, the desert cools, and the equation sinks again into silence. Somewhere beneath water, still moves slowly through the limestone aquifer, carrying the same mineral taste, the same slow vibration. Perhaps it feels the weight above, translating mass into tone, keeping the dialogue alive in frequencies too low for our ears. We call it coincidence because we have forgotten how to listen to direction. The pyramid does not ask for belief. It simply points exactly, unerringly, forever. And in that stillness, one might almost hear the whisper of alignment, the sound of the earth recognizing itself in stone. At midday, the pyramid seems asleep, yet its geometry never rests. Every edge gathers light, every slope measures the sun. The angle of those slopes, 51 degrees and 51 minutes, holds a secret most eyes never notice. If you double that angle and trace the arc, it resolves almost perfectly into the constant P, the ratio that binds circle to line, heaven to earth. It is as though the builders folded the curve of the cosmos into a mountain of stone. Such precision does not arise from coincidence, to shape 4 immense triangles so that their height-to-base ratio mirrors the mathematics of the circle, demands intention. The equation hides in plain sight. Height divided by half the base equals P, a riddle carved in rock, the language of eternity written without words. When the sun descends, its rays slide down those slopes as if reading the formula aloud, whispering the number back into the desert air. But P is not the only secret in the angles. Each face is not truly flat. In certain light, especially at dawn and dusk, a faint crease runs from apex to base, dividing every face into two. The result is 8 subtle planes instead of 4, an optical heartbeat. Invisible at noon, revealed only when the sun touches the horizon. Surveyors in the 1940s caught it by chance during an aerial photograph, the shadow cutting across like a breath. No ancient text mentions it. No restoration could have created it by accident. 8 faces, 4 directions, 1 pulse, a shape designed to inhale and exhale light. To the modern mind, such complexity seems decorative, but decoration does not obey the stars. When the solstice arrives, the western and eastern halves of the southern face divide the sunlight, evenly creating a moment of perfect balance. It is a silent equation between solar time and terrestrial form. Perhaps that is what the architects sought, a structure that would not only mark the passing of the year, but resonate with it. Every sunrise and sunset, a calibration every season, a note in the larger harmony of the planet's orbit. Imagine the scene as it once was. No smog, no city glare, only pure light sweeping across a polished casing of white limestone. The pyramid gleamed like a prism, scattering brightness into the sky. Each edge caught fire for an instant, then faded, leaving afterimages in the air. To those who built it, this must have been a signal, a kind of heartbeat, echoing the rhythm of the sun's own breathing. In that glow, the 8 faces merged into motion. The pyramid seemed alive. Mathematicians still argue whether the angle was chosen deliberately or discovered through trial. But trial would require knowledge of what to seek, and knowledge requires purpose. The more you study its geometry, the more it behaves like an instrument rather than a monument. A resonator tuned not to sound, but to proportion each measurement, converting space into frequency. The 50 phi 1 Formary 1 slope is not merely stable, it is harmonic. The angle allows the pyramid to distribute pressure evenly, to channel vibration through its body without collapse. It is engineering as melody. Stand near one edge and strike the stone lightly. The echo rises, travels, and fades in exactly the time it takes the sun to clear the horizon's last degree, about 4 minutes. Coincidence perhaps, but a perfect one. The ratio of distance to time mirrors the equation of slope to base. The entire monument behaves like a clock that measures not hours, but harmonies. Even the placement of the 8 planes may serve more than beauty. The slight concavity strengthens the structure against earthquakes and thermal expansion. Yet it also produces an alternating pattern of compression and release, and architectural breathing. Some researchers claim that when wind passes over the pyramid, these subtle curves create standing waves of air pressure, faint but measurable. If true, then the builders tuned not only to light, but to wind itself, using geometry to orchestrate motion in the invisible. Picture dusk settling over the plateau. The last rays strike the western half. The other side slips into blue. For a few seconds, the shadow divides the face perfectly. The pyramid becomes a sundial, a compass, and an equation in one. In that fleeting symmetry, the world seems to pause. The number P is no longer abstract. It shines. It breathes. It hums. Perhaps the builders never sought immortality in names or tombs. Perhaps they chased perfection through ratio, believing that to match heaven's mathematics was to join it. To them, numbers were not symbols of order, but gateways to resonance. They did not write them, they built them. The pyramid stands as proof that mathematics can be worship, that proportion can be prayer. When night falls, the stars climb the same angle upward. Orion's belt rises along the same line. The slope descends a reflection across centuries of darkness. The correspondence feels deliberate, as though the pyramid's geometry extends into the constellations. It may be coincidence again, but the desert has little use for coincidence. Everything here is intentional. The slope, the silence, the shimmer. If you walk close to the base in moonlight, the edges vanish, the shape dissolves into the horizon. Only when you step back do the lines return, reminding you that geometry needs distance to reveal its order. So too does truth. Perhaps that was the builder's lesson, that understanding requires movement, that harmony exists only when seen from both near and far. Somewhere within these angles lies the memory of a civilization that treated mathematics not as tool, but as song. Each ratio still hums beneath the stone. Each face still turns its silent equation toward the sun. And as dawn approaches again, the pyramid waits for light to fall at the perfect angle to reignite the number hidden in its skin, a number that circles endlessly, just as the day returns, just as the earth turns, just as the pulse of the universe counts itself into forever. In the silence between the stars and the sand lies a code too vast for language. The Great Pyramid was not built only from stone, it was built from numbers. Ratios ripple through its structure like veins connecting base to height, face to angle volume to mass. And when those ratios are multiplied by 43,200, a strange symmetry unfolds. The pyramid becomes the earth itself, scaled down, crystallized, translated into architecture. Take its height, about 146 meters in its prime. Multiply that by 43,200, and you reach almost exactly the polar radius of the Earth. Take the perimeter of its base, 4 sides of 230 meters, each multiply by the same number, and you approach the equatorial circumference. 2 measures, 1 constant, both mapping the planet in stone. Coincidence, some say, yet the alignment of error is smaller than what modern surveyors achieved before satellites. The number does not feel random, it feels intentional, as if the builders encoded the world into their monument. 43,200. Why that number? It resonates with the motion of the planet itself. There are 43,200 seconds in half a day, 12 hours the turning of light to dark. To divide the day into that many pulses is to think in vibration, not in time. Perhaps the pyramid is not a map, but a metronome keeping the Earth's rhythm through proportion rather than mechanism. Imagine standing before it when its casing stones were still smooth and gleaming. Sunlight slides down the slopes and reflects toward the desert floor, a pulse of gold spreading outward. Each reflection marks a unit of time, the geometry converting sunlight into cadence. The monument becomes a tuning fork for the planet, vibrating at the frequency of rotation, anchoring cosmic motion into matter. Such correspondence suggests a mind that understood unity, not separation. They saw the Earth not as ground, but as instrument, its size, spin, and curvature, part of a single harmony. The pyramid, by echoing those measures, became a resonant body, a miniature world, humming the same note as the sphere beneath it. To modernize, it is architecture. To ancient ears, it might have been music. Even the placement of the structure reinforces this scale. Its latitude, 29. 9792 degree EN, mirrors the speed of light, 299,792 kilometers per second when written in the same numerals. Coincidence again? Perhaps, but coincidences that rhyme across mathematics and geography begin to sound like design. Maybe this was the builder's way of linking the terrestrial with the celestial, embedding in stone the velocity of illumination itself. The pyramid therefore becomes a bridge between measures the human foot, the royal cubit, the arc of the meridian. Every unit folds into another until the only thing left is ratio, pure and simple, stripped of language. To look upon it is to glimpse the structure of thought itself, proportion as consciousness. The ancient engineers might not have known our equations, yet they felt their truth. They worked through intuition, guided by the same constants that govern light orbit and resonance. In the heart of the monument, these numbers manifest as balance. The angles distribute mass so evenly that the pressure on each corner is identical, maintaining equilibrium, despite centuries of erosion. This equality of weight is another kind of harmony, a physical chord struck against gravity. Perhaps that was the deeper purpose of the 43:200 ratio, not to measure the Earth, but to stabilize it, to lock the planet's pulse into a steady tempo. Some theories call this nonsense, yet the stones remain unshaken through millennia of tremor. Their arrangement dissipates force with mathematical grace. It is as if the pyramid knows how to breathe with the Earth expanding and contracting in sympathy with seismic rhythm. When storms pass over Giza, the air pressure changes slightly and the stones release faint clicks, tiny sighs of equilibrium being maintained. The monument does not resist the planet, it participates in it. The constant 43:200 may therefore not be mere arithmetic, but a key to resonance. If each unit of length represents a fraction of the Earth's frequency, then the entire structure becomes a harmonic amplifier. Its proportions would convert motion into stillness, stillness into motion cycling energy through geometry, the way a musician cycles breath through a flute. A song too low to hear, too vast to measure, but still alive beneath the wind. Think of it as the Earth's mirror. Every sunrise ignites the pyramid at an angle corresponding to its latitude. Every sunset extinguishes it with the same precision. Day and night, expansion and contraction light, and dark. The monument turns those opposites into resonance. Even erosion, which should destroy symmetry, has done little more than weather its skin, leaving the internal ratio intact. The mathematics outlives the material. There is beauty in that endurance. It means the builders found the rhythm that survives decay. Numbers are incorruptible. They do not age. When you encode truth in proportion, you make it immune to time. And perhaps that was their true aim, not to leave words which can be mistranslated, but a geometry that always resolves back into harmony. At night, the plateau cools and the stars rise like notes from a buried score. The pyramid sits beneath them, silent, yet resonant, its angles repeating the curvature of the Earth, its proportions whispering the constant that measures our days. If you could translate vibration into vision, you might see lines of light connecting apex to pole base, to equator, a lattice of number spanning the void. That is what the ancients built, not a tomb, not a temple, but a cord between the planet and the infinite. And though we no longer hear it, the cord still plays. The ratio still exists, vibrating through stone, through soil, through the slow rotation of the world. 43,200, a number that hums beneath the breath of every dawn, the heartbeat of a planet remembered in the language of geometry. Stone remembers what we forget. Each block of the Great Pyramid carries its own frequency, its own chemical signature, its own reason for being placed exactly where it rests. To the modern eye, it is simply masonry, limestone, granite and mortar. But to those who shaped it, the materials were chosen not for strength alone, but for resonance. The builders were not stacking stones. They were building a circuit. The outer shell once gleamed with white Tura limestone, its surface smooth as light itself. That layer was more than decoration. Limestone dense with calcium carbonate resists heat and reflects electromagnetic charge. It formed an insulating skin around the core, a protective sheath that could hold energy in like the ceramic shell of a capacitor. Beneath it, the inner body was made of rougher limestone, quarried directly from the plateau, porous alive, with tiny channels that breathed the desert air. And deeper still, at the heart of the monument, veins of red granite glowed faintly in the torchlight. That granite, brought from Aswan nearly 600 miles to the south, is rich with quartz and feldspar minerals that react to pressure by producing electric potential. Quartz, the hidden pulse of the earth, When compressed, it emits charge. When charge is applied, it vibrates. Every watch, every radio transmitter, every memory crystal owes its life to that same principle. In the pyramid, these crystals were not ornaments. They were the heart of a vast resonator, tuned to the slow rhythm of the planet. Under weight, under vibration, they would hum with invisible energy, a field faint but steady. The pyramid was not a tomb. It was a body, its bones of limestone, its blood of quartz. The granite blocks of the king's chamber weigh up to 70 tons, each fitted so precisely that even a blade of metal cannot slip between them. The ceiling beams form a kind of chambered cage, distributing pressure evenly across the quartz veins. Above them, 5 relieving chambers stack like lungs, allowing the structure to breathe under stress. When wind or seismic tremor passed through the plateau, those chambers would absorb and release the motion in waves, an architectural diaphragm. Pressure would convert to charge, to vibration to sound, and sound always to silence. Imagine standing in that room when it was new. No soot, no graffiti, no breath of tourists, just the still air of a sealed chamber and the scent of granite warmed by its own memory of the sun. Strike the wall, and the echo returns in a single deep tone, lingering longer than expected. That tone is not accidental. It is a natural resonance of the chamber's proportions, matching the human heartbeat, multiplied into the language of stone. Even now, when sound engineers test it, the frequency hovers around 440 Hz, the note of A, the pitch to which modern orchestras tune their instruments. Coincidence again, or continuity? Perhaps this was not chance but design. The ancient masons may have discovered that stone sings. By choosing granite rich in quartz, they gave the pyramid a voice. When the wind passed over its flanks, when water moved beneath its base, when footsteps echoed in its corridors, the vibration would travel through the entire structure, lighting the crystals in subtle, silent conversation. Every grain of quartz, shifting, releasing minute electric fields, turning the whole monument into a slow, steady hum. Energy did not die there, it resonated. The outer casing, long since stolen, once sealed this charge within. Its polished faces would have reflected sunlight by day and held faint ionization by night, a barrier between the living world and whatever current moved through the stone. To step inside the pyramid then would have been to step into a battery of soundless power, a chamber balanced between gravity and electricity. Perhaps the priests or engineers or dreamers who built it could feel that energy with their skin, the low throb of resonance rising through the walls. It might have been their form of prayer, not words, but vibration. Modern science calls the effect piezoelectricity. Stress creates charge. Charge creates motion. It is the same principle used in quartz clocks and sensors, yet the ancients applied it on a scale we barely comprehend. Every pressure of stone upon stone, every tremor in the earth would have triggered infinitesimal discharges. Multiplied across millions of tons of crystal-rich granite, those sparks could have built an ambient field, faint but continuous, wrapping the pyramid in a sheath of energy. If limestone insulated and granite generated, then the pyramid itself became a natural condenser, holding charge between sky and ground. The inner corridors may have served as conduits, shaping the movement of that charge, like wires guiding current. Their narrowness, their sharp turns, their precision all hint at a function beyond ceremony. Even the so-called air shafts might have been designed not for breathing, but for tuning, channeling, vibration to the chambers where quartz could respond. Everything about the structure suggests design for resonance, not ritual. And when the sun rose each day, pouring its heat across the limestone, the outer shell would warm faster than the granite within. Thermal expansion created tension. Tension created pressure. Pressure awoke the quartz. Light became stress, stress became charge, a transformation of solar energy into electrical whisper. The pyramid was not passive stone. It was photosensitive, alive to dawn. Centuries later, when lightning struck its tip, travelers reported faint blue glows dancing along its flanks. Pliny wrote of flames that kiss the stones and vanish. Perhaps those lights were St. Elmo's fire, the visible breath of ionized air, released by quartz and limestone reacting together. To the ancients, that glow might have been proof that the pyramid spoke to heaven. To us, it might be evidence of the world's oldest energy experiment, hidden behind the mask of religion. In this way, every choice of material tells a story. The limestone reflects, the granite resonates, the quartz remembers. Together, they form a triad insulation generation. Vibration, a trinity of matter and meaning. If the pyramid were a body, these would be its skin, its organs, its voice. If it were an instrument, these would be its strings, its soundboard, its echo. Perhaps that was the secret the builders understood, that stone is not dead, only slower than us. Given shape, given pressure, given time, it begins to hum. And in that hum, somewhere between gravity and light, the earth itself learns to sing. If one stands within the king's chamber long enough, the silence begins to sound alive. At first, it feels like nothing more than still air, a tomb of emptiness. But after a few moments, subtle pulses emerge, a low vibration rising from the walls, a whisper through the granite. It is not wind, it is not imagination, it is the breath of resonance trapped in stone. Sound engineers have measured it, skeptical, yet intrigued. At certain frequencies, particularly near 440 Hz, the room hums like the body of a tuning fork. That is the note, A, the same pitch used to tune modern orchestras, the same vibration that brings order to chaos in sound. The ancients may have known this not by number, but by intuition, by the sensation of air vibrating against bone. The king's chamber, then, was not built for speech. It was built for tone. Its proportions form a precise harmonic ratio. Length to width equals 2 to 1 width. To height equals 1.18 to 1. The ceiling beams massive and evenly spaced act, like resonant strings, distributing the vibration evenly across the roof. Each strike of sound bounces along those surfaces until it folds into itself, producing what physicists call a standing wave. In such a wave, energy does not move forward. It simply oscillates in place, held captive, eternal. The room becomes an instrument that never finishes its note. When ancient voices filled this chamber, their chants would have multiplied their echoes, merging until the boundary between sound and body vanished. The singers must have felt it in their lungs, in their ribs, in the marrow of their bones. A vibration so pure that it blurs the edges of identity, leaving only resonance. Perhaps this was the experience the builders sought, a communion, not of word, but of frequency, where human and stone vibrate as one. The granite dense with quartz amplifies this effect. When sound pressure strikes, its microscopic deformations release electric potential, an invisible shimmer of energy that fills the space. Even a whisper can set the chamber alive, a subtle glow of piezoelectric charge. Imagine the scene by torchlight, flickering flames, shadows pulsing on redstone, voices rising into perfect harmony. The air thickens with sound, yet nothing escapes. It is like standing inside a living heartbeat. Outside the chamber, the grand gallery extends upward like the throat of a giant instrument. Its steep slope, its corbelled walls, its rhythmic niches, every feature invites acoustic exploration. Strike a tone at the base, and the gallery carries it upward, splitting it into harmonics, sending waves that rebound into the king's chamber above. The entire passage system behaves as a resonant circuit, one chamber, as generator one, as amplifier, the shafts as tuning pipes. It is architecture designed to conduct vibration. Even the sarcophagus, cut from a single block of granite, contributes to this symphony. When struck, it produces a deep F sharp close enough to the chamber's resonant A to form a perfect fifth, the interval that in every known musical system symbolizes harmony and balance. Two tones separated by the same ratio that governs light and darkness, day and night, expansion and contraction. The ancient engineers must have felt this harmony, even if they had no notation for it. They built it instead, embedding the interval into the very stones of the king's chamber. When explorers first opened the sealed room, they described a strange pressure in their ears, a sense that the walls were breathing. Some faint, inaudible vibration still lingers, generated by the slow expansion and contraction of the granite as it warms and cools. Even in silence, the chamber continues to sing too low for us to hear, too steady to fade. It hums in sympathy with the Earth's own frequencies, the Schumann resonances that ripple between ground and sky. Those pulses measure around 8 Hz, the same rhythm as a calm human heartbeat. Perhaps the pyramid is not a monument to death, but a metronome for life. Consider how sound moves through matter. Air carries it softly, but stone carries it deep. A single vibration inside the chamber could ripple through thousands of tons of granite, reaching the pyramid's core, bouncing back, forming patterns like standing waves in a vast instrument. To those attuned to it, the experience would be overwhelming, the entire structure turning into a slow, rolling voice, one that could not be silenced even by time. This may be why legends speak of priests who spoke to the stones. They did not mean conversation, they meant resonance. By matching the tone of the chamber, a singer could awaken harmonics that stirred the very blocks around him. Sound became bridge spirit, became vibration, and matter responded. Even today, a single sustained note inside that space fills it completely, as though the pyramid itself inhales and exhales with the sound. The ancients may have used this resonance to alter perception, to enter trance, to commune with what they called the gods, but what we might call frequencies beyond ordinary hearing. The humming chamber becomes a kind of instrument for consciousness. In its perfect ratios, the body and the building become one circuit. Each breath is an oscillation, each heartbeat a signal, each word an offering of tone. Outside, the desert winds drift past the broken casing stones, echoing faintly down the corridors. The pyramid listens, amplifies, transforms. Even the smallest vibration footsteps whispers the hum of insects, finds its place in the pattern. Everything becomes part of the music. And when night falls, the chamber cools, the quartz contracts, and the faint electrical field dissipates into stillness. For a moment, nothing moves. Then from somewhere deep within the granite, a barely perceptible tone rises again, a note without origin or end. It is the same frequency that has filled this place for 4,500 years, the sound of the planet remembering itself. Perhaps that is all the builders ever wanted to give the earth, a voice that could endure the ages, a song of balance and silence, a melody of stone and breath. The air inside the Grand Gallery feels different, denser, as though it remembers every vibration that ever passed through it. It rises steeply from the heart of the pyramid, 70 meters of narrow ascent, lined with steps too shallow for comfort, their rhythm deliberate musical. The corridor widens upward, each wall layered in massive limestone courses that lean inward like the sides of a gigantic harp. Each step, each beam seems tuned to a precise proportion. Nothing about this passage feels arbitrary. It was designed not for processions, but for resonance. The geometry alone tells the story. Its floor tilts upward at an angle of 26 degrees, roughly half the slope of the pyramid's outer faces. Some say that symmetry connects interior to exterior, that every dimension echoes another, creating a web of internal harmony. As one ascends, the narrowing walls compress sound, amplifying each breath, each footfall into a small thunder that rolls ahead like distant surf. At certain frequencies, the gallery sings back. A low hum, metallic and alive, travels through the stone, slipping into the body like a second heartbeat. Acoustic tests show that the Grand Gallery enhances tones around 121 and 244 Hz, multiples of the 440 Hz resonance of the King's Chamber. It acts as an amplifier, a waveguide leading sound toward the granite heart above. Imagine it as a throat channeling air and tone into the chamber that waits like a skull atop a spine. When the lower frequencies travel upward, they combine with the higher harmonics from the chamber, forming a standing wave that fills the entire pyramid. The structure becomes a body of sound, its architecture functioning as anatomy. The corbelled roof is the key. Each layer of stone juts slightly inward, reducing pressure while controlling reverberation. When vibration moves along those tiers, the sound scatters and folds back upon itself, producing a cascade of harmonics. Physicists would call this diffusion. The ancients might have called it breath. The gallery breathes when sound moves through it, exhaling vibration that the granite above can translate into energy. The effect is subtle, invisible, but powerful, a transformation of motion into field of voice, into force. Every element appears calculated. The notches along the side walls, evenly spaced, have puzzled researchers for decades. Some believe they once held wooden beams or slabs that close the passage. Others think they supported platforms or mechanical devices, but their rhythm, their precise spacing suggests something more intentional, like frets on an invisible instrument. Each notch divides the gallery into equal intervals, creating discrete sections where sound waves could reflect and combine. In other words, the gallery is a resonant cavity segmented like the pipes of a colossal organ. At its upper end, the gallery opens suddenly into the antechamber of the King's Chamber. There, a series of granite portcullis slabs hang in grooves now fixed in place, once movable. Their dimensions correspond to musical intervals ratios of 2 to 3, 3 to 4. When vibration from the gallery reached these gates, they would have oscillated imperceptibly, modulating the tone. What appears to us as architecture could be a form of sound engineering. The pyramid, then, is not static. It is dynamic, its components designed to interact, to resonate, to respond. The quality of sound here is uncanny. Clap once, and the echo returns layered and soft, as if the corridor absorbs part of it and releases another. Hum a note, and the walls seem to choose which frequencies to keep. The air thickens with invisible standing waves, ripples of compression and rarefaction, weaving a pattern of pressure that the body can feel more than hear. The gallery becomes an instrument tuned to the dimension of the human chest cavity, wide enough to resonate with the breath, tall enough to mirror the length of a spine. Perhaps it was meant to align human resonance with the Earth's. The stone itself participates. Limestone, unlike granite, is less rigid, more responsive to sound. Its pores trap air, allowing vibration to travel in slow, elastic waves. Each step of the gallery acts as a resonant plate, amplifying low frequencies that rise from the subterranean passages below. In that design, the pyramid may function as an enormous Helmholtz resonator. The subchambers generate pressure, the gallery modulates it, and the King's Chamber converts it into pure tone. Such a mechanism would not require wires or fuel only movement, water, and time. When explorers shout or sing within these walls, the sound takes on a direction of its own, bending upward, as if drawn by gravity's opposite. The echo does not return, it climbs. Ancient travelers might have experienced this ascent as a spiritual metaphor, the soul rising through sound toward the chamber of light. But even stripped of symbolism, the physics remain vibration moving through narrowing space pressure, increasing amplitude, growing until resonance transforms into force. The gallery is an amplifier, but also a teacher. It shows that form can guide energy without machinery. The architecture can become technology simply by aligning with natural law. Under torchlight, the shadows of the corbelled stones dance across the ceiling like ribs under skin. The gallery seems to breathe with each flicker, as though remembering the voices that once filled it. Every surface hums faintly with the echo of human tone. The memory of sound recorded in the texture of stone. Even silence feels structured here, divided into harmonic intervals that make the emptiness sing. Some researchers suggest that prolonged exposure to these resonances alters human perception. The ear begins to lose distinction between internal and external vibration. Breath synchronizes with echo pulse with rhythm. The listener becomes part of the circuit part of the song. Perhaps this was the true initiation, not ritual, but entrainment, the merging of body and monument into one field of vibration. And when the sound finally fades, the gallery remains charged like a struck bell that continues to tremble long after the mallet has been lifted. The silence that follows is not absence. It is equilibrium. For a brief moment, everything, the air, the stone, the observer, rests in perfect harmonic stillness. It is there in that quiet point that one begins to understand why the pyramid was built, not to honor death, but to capture balance, to turn geometry into music, and to let that music echo forever in the bones of the earth. Beneath the pyramid, beneath the dry bones of the plateau, something moves. It is slow, patient, invisible, a deep breath of water flowing through the limestone that holds Giza aloft. Long before the desert became silent, the Nile spread its fingers wide here, saturating the bedrock with currents that whispered like blood through veins. Those currents never vanished. Even now, they slide through fissures far below an unseen river that feeds both sand and stone. To most, it is only groundwater, the forgotten trace of a wetter world. But to the builders, it may have been the foundation of the entire design. The Great Pyramid stands not by chance above one of the region's most active aquifers. From that aquifer vibrations rise the Earth's natural hum, a chorus of frequencies too deep for the ear, yet strong enough to tremble through stone. The ancients could not have named these oscillations, but they might have felt them underfoot, the faint rhythm of a living planet. Perhaps they understood that beneath every surface lies a pulse, and that pulse can be amplified. The choice of site was not political, it was musical. The plateau at Giza acts as a resonant platform, a geological instrument tuned by water. Limestone, porous and alive, allows vibration to move through it, like air through a flute. When water courses below, its flow generates pressure fluctuations, small, constant, steady. Those ripples travel upward, shaking the base of the pyramid with a whisper that never ends. Every drop becomes a note, every current a breath. The monument listens. In the cool dark of the subterranean chamber, the sound is stronger. The floor there is raw bedrock, uneven, unfinished, its ceiling low, its silence heavy. It feels less like a tomb and more like an ear pressed to the earth. Visitors who descend describe a strange sense of motion in the still air, as if the ground itself is breathing. Scientists might call it microseismic resonance. But to those who built this place, it was life, the proof that the planet still sings. When water moves through limestone, it creates an electrical phenomenon called streaming potential. A faint current, born of friction between mineral and flow. That current can interact with quartz in the granite, above producing piezoelectric pulses, tiny, invisible flashes of energy. Imagine millions of those pulses rising through the pyramid's foundation, merging with the resonance of its chambers, feeding its silent heartbeat. The entire monument becomes a translator between elements. Water becomes vibration. Vibration becomes electricity. Electricity becomes sound. Perhaps this is why the pyramid's base was leveled with such obsessive precision. Any uneven surface would distort the frequencies rising from below. The builders flattened the rock until it was truer than the horizon, ensuring that the upward hum met no resistance. The foundation became a diaphragm, transmitting vibration into the core of the structure. The ancient masons could not have measured in volts or hertz, yet they worked as if they knew those principles by instinct. The result was not a static monument, but a living instrument coupled to the Earth's hydrologic rhythm. At dawn, when the air cools and contracts, the groundwater expands slightly, pressing upward against the limestone cap. At dusk, the process reverses. This tidal breathing of the aquifer repeats daily, as dependable as the sun. The pyramid, with its immense weight, presses back, compressing the stone and amplifying the oscillation. Every sunrise, every sunset becomes a note in the slow symphony of the planet's respiration. The builders place their monument precisely where that song was loudest. Ancient myths remember it differently. They speak of Osiris sleeping beneath the earth of a hidden river that feeds the god's heart of soundless waters that carry the secret of renewal. Perhaps those stories are metaphors for what was once known, that beneath the surface, energy flows, and if you listen closely, you can feel it through the soles of your feet. The pyramid may have been an attempt to give that myth physical form, to shape stone around the song of subterranean water. Even modern measurements support the idea of connection. Ground-penetrating radar reveals channels of moisture under Giza, narrow and winding, converging near the base of the Great Pyramid. During certain seasons, sensors detect low-frequency tremors, hydraulic pulses that align eerily with the pyramid's own resonant frequencies. Coincidence, perhaps, or the last echo of a system once understood and deliberately used. In the stillness of the subterranean chamber, the boundary between science and myth blurs. Stand there, extinguish every light, and you will hear nothing, but you will feel everything. A weight pressing from below, a slow rhythm in the stone, a vibration that does not fade even when you hold your breath. It is the earth itself, speaking through water, and the pyramid replying through resonance. Together, they form a circuit older than any machine. Imagine the builders marking this harmony with instruments we no longer recognize, bowls of water that quiver when vibration passes, chords that hum when stretched between posts, sand patterns that shift in waves across the floor. They would have mapped resonance, not with numbers, but with sight and touch, aligning the base until every drop of water, every grain of sand trembled in perfect symmetry. Only then would they have laid the first stone. The Nile, wide and glittering, once flowed closer to this place. When it flooded, the aquifer swelled, the ground vibrated stronger, and the pyramid may have reached the height of its power. Some have speculated that the monument acted like a transducer, converting the kinetic energy of water into electromagnetic pulse, balancing heaven and earth. During those floods, the priests may have seen it as a yearly rebirth, the river's motion awakening the structure, recharging its purpose. Even now, when the river has retreated and the desert has reclaimed the plain, that pulse persists. It is quieter, slower, nearly forgotten, yet still measurable, a faint tremor beneath the sand. The pyramid stands as its echo, a memory of the time when water and stone spoke the same language. If you could hear the world's frequencies condensed into a single tone, it would sound like this place, low, patient, endless. The wind above may erase the tracks of travelers, but the water below remembers every sound, every movement. It carries the whisper of construction, the rhythm of footsteps, the murmur of chants long vanished. And somewhere beneath the granite heart of the pyramid, the current continues its journey toward the Nile, humming its secret song to the stones that listen. In the depths of the Great Pyramid, narrow shafts snake upward through the stone, their angles deliberate their purpose. Uncertain, they are too small for human passage, too precise to be accidental, and too smooth to have been carved without intent. For centuries, they have been called air shafts, channels meant to bring breath into the sealed heart of a monument built for the dead. But no air is needed in a tomb that holds no body. Perhaps they were not meant to carry wind at all, but something far more elusive, sound vapor or even reaction. When the first robotic probes crept through these channels, they found copper fittings, traces of corrosion, residues of zinc and acid. The discovery was puzzling. These were not decorations or artifacts of burial, they were remnants of chemistry. Scientists tested the samples and whispered names: zinc chloride, hydrochloric acid. Both substances, when combined under controlled conditions, release a powerful gas hydrogen, invisible, odorless, pure. In a closed system, hydrogen becomes more than gas. It becomes potential. If this interpretation holds, the so-called Queen's Chamber was no shrine but a reaction chamber. Its two narrow shafts, angled differently from those of the King's Chamber above, may once have carried separate fluids, one acidic, one metallic, from reservoirs hidden within the pyramid or drawn from the surrounding bedrock. When they met inside the chamber, a subtle alchemy occurred. Zinc chloride and hydrochloric acid mixed, producing hydrogen gas that filled the room and rose upward through the structure. The reaction was self-sustaining as long as the fluids flowed. When the process ceased, the gas dissipated without trace, leaving only silence and stone. Hydrogen, the lightest element, climbs naturally. Guided by the shafts, it would have drifted through the Grand Gallery, like breath through a throat, following the path of least resistance toward the King's Chamber. There, the granite walls weighted dense with quartz hungry for vibration. If sound or electrical discharge were introduced even faintly, the hydrogen could have ionized, forming plasma, a shimmering field of charged particles. In that moment, matter itself would have sung. The concept sounds modern, yet its components are ancient. The ingredients, zinc acid, limestone water, were all available to the builders. Their combination echoes the earliest experiments of alchemy, the marriage of stone and metal acid and air to release the spirit hidden in matter. Perhaps the pyramid was the grandest of laboratories, a fusion of geology and chemistry, tuned to the same idea that drove future inventors to create energy from resonance. In the stillness of the Queen's Chamber, one can almost imagine the faint hiss of reaction, the air trembling with unseen transformation. The walls lined with limestone rich in moisture would have absorbed and reflected the vibration, preventing ignition while preserving flow. The floor channels, long dismissed as symbolic, may once have carried condensate back to hidden reservoirs, completing the circuit. Nothing wasted, nothing left to chance. A system designed for continuity, like breath. Christopher Dunn, the engineer who revived this theory, described the pyramid as a hydrogen-powered resonator, a machine that captured Earth's vibration, amplified it through geometry, and used hydrogen as a medium to broadcast it into the sky. The gas rising through the Grand Gallery would have carried sound as modulation, just as radio waves carry signal. The King's Chamber, acting as a Helmholtz resonator, could have converted vibration into electric potential through piezoelectric quartz. In essence, the pyramid became a transmitter, a beacon of harmonic energy bridging ground and air. Skeptics scoff, yet the pieces fit with uncanny elegance. Every chamber, every passage serves a function. Within that framework, the subterranean chamber, a stabilizer, the Queen's Chamber, as generator, the Grand Gallery, as amplifier, the King's Chamber, as converter. Even the missing capstone fits, perhaps a conductive metal pyramidion that completed the circuit, discharging energy into the atmosphere. When lightning struck, as it surely did, the energy would have grounded harmlessly through the limestone shell, recharging the reaction below. An ancient system of balance, using nature itself as engine. Whether or not the pyramid produced power in a technological sense, the idea reveals something profound about its builders. They perceived matter as alive, capable of transformation through precise proportion. For them, chemistry was not separate from spirituality. Reaction was ritual. The mixing of zinc and acid might have symbolized union, the merging of male and female principles, sun and earth, breath and stone. Hydrogen, invisible and pure, became the bridge, the spirit of the structure, the element that ascends. Imagine the process on a night when the desert is cool, the stars motionless. Deep within the pyramid, two trickles of liquid meet in silence. The reaction begins gentle at first, then steady, filling the corridors with gas. Pressure rises softly, the air hums. Through the shafts, hydrogen escapes upward, brushing the walls with static, kissing the quartz, until faint sparks bloom like fireflies. The pyramid glows from within, a silent lantern, breathing light that no human eyes ever saw. Above the capstone gleams. Around it, the thin air flickers with blue flame. St. Elmo's fire again, but now purposeful, controlled. For a few moments, the entire monument becomes a living conduit between earth and sky. When dawn comes, the reaction ceases. Condensation trickles back through the stone, the gas dissipates into the warming air, and the pyramid sleeps again. To anyone standing outside, nothing changes. The structure remains still, immutable, eternal. Only those who listen closely might feel the faint echo of what once happened inside the ghost of reaction, the memory of movement within the unmoving. In this vision, the pyramid is no longer a tomb, but a breathing organism. Its limestone skin insulates its granite organs, vibrate, its hidden veins carry chemical lifeblood. The gas that rises through it is its sole light, invisible, eternal. To build such a system required not only engineering but philosophy, a belief that the universe itself is alive, that stone and water, metal and light all share one pulse. Perhaps the builders sought to mimic that unity, to create a structure that would not merely endure the ages, but participate in the cosmic song. Whether or not hydrogen ever flowed through those shafts, the possibility lingers like scent in the air. Even now, when one stands in the Queen's chamber and whispers, the voice returns, changed, as if passing through unseen current. The walls seem to breathe back, repeating the sound, not as echo, but as memory. Somewhere in that response lies the essence of the pyramid transformation translation, the alchemy of silence. The chemicals have faded, the copper corroded, but the idea remains that even in stillness, the monument was designed to move. The Grand Gallery narrows toward the King's chamber, like a throat guiding a final breath. Every inch of it feels deliberate, carved with precision to serve not as a passage, but as a conduit. When hydrogen gas rose from the Queen's chamber below, it would have drifted into this long ascending corridor, where sound and geometry met to shape it into something new. To call it a hallway is to miss its nature. It was a waveguide, an acoustic and energetic bridge designed to carry vibration upward, sound into motion, motion into power. Walk its length, and you notice the slope, steep yet consistent, rising at the same 26-degree angle that mirrors the pyramid's internal proportion. The floor is ribbed with small steps, each spaced evenly like the teeth of a tuning fork. The walls tilt inward in smooth tiers, forming a narrowing vault that squeezes air into rhythm. Sound once released at the base does not fade. Here it accelerates. The pressure builds, compressing resonance the way wind tightens in the neck of a bottle before singing. The gallery transforms every whisper, every vibration from below into a concentrated beam of oscillation. When explorers shout within it, the echo does not return. It climbs. Each note leaps forward, folding over itself, creating interference patterns that travel like serpents through the air. Acousticians have tested the space and have found its resonance sharp, focused around 121 and 244 Hz frequencies that harmonize with the deeper tone of the King's chamber above. The gallery, in essence, is a transitional field, a resonant waveguide, where lower frequencies from the earth and higher frequencies from granite collide, mixing like warm and cold currents. In that mixture, energy condenses. Christopher Dunn compared it to the throat of a resonant cavity oscillator, a device that converts vibration into standing electromagnetic waves. Hydrogen rising through this passage would have acted as a medium, a carrier of sound. When the gas filled the corridor, each vibration from the subterranean tremors, each tone from the Queen's chamber would have travelled upward through it, coupling with the piezoelectric quartz of the King's chamber. Gas, sound and stone, together three states of matter, uniting in one breath. When resonance peaked, the corridor itself would have glowed with faint ionization, a ghostly blue mist tracing its walls. The steps, small and unassuming, serve a deeper purpose. They act as reflectors, scattering sound into harmonics that reinforce one another. Each riser divides the main frequency into subtones, producing a harmonic ladder that mirrors the musical octave. It is the architecture of a scale carved in limestone. The pattern is too consistent to be coincidence. Each platform equals roughly 1 royal cubit. In height, the same unit that measures harmonic ratios across the pyramid's geometry. To climb this stairway is to move through sound itself, ascending from bass to treble, from earth to sky. Along the side walls, deep slots are cut into the stone at regular intervals. Their function remains a mystery, but their spacing suggests rhythm rather than structure. Some propose that they held wooden beams or mechanical devices, yet none have survived. Others suspect they marked stations for resonant plates or diaphragms that once modulated pressure as the gas ascended. If so, the gallery was not empty, it was an instrument alive with vibration. A narrow cathedral of tone where chemistry, geometry and sound merged into one ritual of energy. Imagine it in operation, the aquifer below, feeding vibration into the base hydrogen, flowing upward the entire corridor, humming with a tone near the Earth's own resonance. The air thickens with charge. The limestone walls begin to quiver. Every molecule inside moves in rhythm, forming nodes of standing waves, points where vibration freezes into pure potential. Those nodes stretch in intervals that correspond to the gallery's proportions. Every 10 meters, a harmonic crest. Every 20, a trough. The structure breathes, expanding and contracting like a lung of stone. At the upper end, the gallery opens suddenly into the antechamber before the King's chamber, where granite portcullis slabs once hung like tuning gates. When pressure waves from below reach these slabs, they would have oscillated imperceptibly, modulating vibration, much as valves regulate airflow in a pipe organ. Each gate carved from quartz-rich granite could translate mechanical resonance into electric potential through piezoelectric effect. The corridor thus became a converter shaping sound into charge energy, into field. Even without gas, the gallery still behaves as a resonator. When researchers chant or play music inside, the sound grows in strength instead of fading, bouncing from wall to wall until it forms an invisible river. Some visitors report a sense of dizziness, a pressure in the chest as though the air were alive and aware. Others feel their heartbeat sinking to the vibrations drawn into a slower rhythm. Whether scientific or psychological, the effect remains the same. The space alters perception. It turns the act of hearing into the act of being heard. If the pyramid functioned as a generator, this corridor was its main artery. Energy born in the Queen's chamber rose here, refined by geometry, until it reached the granite heart that could convert it into radiant power. The limestone walls insulated, preventing discharge. The slope guided flow. The resonant harmonics tuned vibration. Nothing in its design feels decorative. Every joint, every tier, every step participates in a silent mathematics. Even erosion cannot erase its purpose. The frequency remains embedded in dimension. At night, when light fails, the Grand Gallery still holds the memory of its resonance. Stand within it and whisper, and the sound returns, changed, stretched into something more than echo. It becomes tone pure and unwavering, suspended in the air like the breath of the planet itself. It is easy to imagine the ancients gathering there not to worship, but to listen to attune themselves to the invisible current passing through stone and gas the union of science and spirit. Perhaps they believed that by harmonizing with this current, they could rise, as hydrogen does ascending through sound toward the stars. In this way, the Grand Gallery was not merely a passage to the king's chamber, it was the bridge between the worlds of matter and vibration. Here, the pulse of the earth became audible, the whisper of water transformed into the song of stone. To walk its length is to traverse the unseen ladder between ground and sky, between silence and sound. Even now its geometry hums faintly, waiting for air vibration or courage enough to awaken it again. And when it does, the entire pyramid might breathe once more, exhaling through its ancient throat the same frequency that once bound the heavens to the earth. At the top of the Grand Gallery, beyond the narrowing passage, and the carved notches that seem to count every breath the air changes, the space opens abruptly, and the rhythm of stone resolves into silence. This is the king's chamber, the granite heart of the pyramid, the still center around which all vibration gathers. It is not large, yet its weight is unimaginable. 200 tons of red granite from Aswan, each block fitted so perfectly that they seem fused together. Here sound finds its end, and in that end, transformation. The chamber measures 10.5 by 5 by nearly 6 meters dimensions, chosen with care. Each ratio corresponds to musical intervals, lengths that amplify specific harmonics of the 440 Hz tone that fills the space. Length to width approximates the ratio of 2:1. Width to height, 1.141. An almost perfect fifth an octave. When sound moves through these ratios, it does not scatter. It resonates. Pressure waves reflect evenly forming standing nodes of air and stone. The result is a vibration that does not decay, a tone that lives in equilibrium. This is what scientists call a Helmholtz resonator, a cavity that traps energy, balancing the relationship between volume and aperture. You hear it when you blow across a bottle's neck, or when wind hums through a cavern. But here, on a colossal scale, the effect magnifies until the entire room becomes an engine of resonance. The pyramid's architecture funnels vibration upward, compressing it through the Grand Gallery, until it reaches this chamber where the frequency locks into place. The granite walls, rich with quartz, respond with a faint piezoelectric shimmer. Pressure converts to charge to field. The pyramid's heartbeat peaks here, invisible yet alive. Above the ceiling, 5 smaller cavities are stacked like lungs, each separated by granite slabs. These relieving chambers were said to prevent collapse, yet their spacing follows harmonic ratios, too precise for coincidence. When vibration reaches them, each cavity responds to a different overtone, distributing energy evenly across the structure. In effect, they tune the chamber, stabilizing resonance. Just as soundboards stabilize a violin's tone, even the names of those who discovered them, vice pairing, echo through the centuries like notes on a staff. A reminder that discovery itself was part of the design's unfolding. Inside the chamber lies a single object, the granite coffer hollow, lidless and slightly damaged. It seems too large to have been carried through the corridor, suggesting it was placed before the chamber was sealed. When struck, it rings, not metaphorically, but literally, a deep F-sharp, resonant and clear. That tone forms a perfect fifth with the chamber's dominant frequency of A. 2 tones, 2 rooms, 1 harmony. Coffer and chamber singing to each other, forming the interval that ancient musicians called the sound of creation. In such balance, energy becomes pattern. Modern researchers who measure the field within find fluctuations, tiny oscillations that align with the Schumann resonance of the Earth, roughly 8 cycles per second. That rhythm repeats everywhere in the world, the electromagnetic breath between ground and ionosphere. The pyramid amplifies, it focuses, it gives it voice when one stands still in that space. Even without instruments, the body begins to sense the pulse. Heart rate slows, breath deepens, mind empties. It is not magic. It is entrainment, the synchronization of human rhythm with planetary rhythm. Perhaps that was the purpose of this design, to bring the body into harmony with the earth, to make human resonance one with the planets. Hydrogen from the lower chambers would have reached this point carrying vibration as gas. Sound from the gallery would have pushed it into standing wave. Granite would have transformed it into field. In that moment, chemistry, physics, and spirit converged. The king's chamber became the fulcrum of a vast invisible machine, half instrument, half organism. Energy entered from below as motion and exited above as light. When lightning flashed across the desert sky, the charge would have found the pyramid's apex, travelling down its slopes into the limestone, through the granite, and into the earth's aquifer. Each strike a renewal, a pulse that kept the structure alive. Observers in ancient times might have seen faint blue corona discharges flickering along the edges, mistaking them for divine fire. But it was simply energy seeking balance, just as sound seeks resolution in silence. Consider the experience of standing there millennia ago, perhaps alone, perhaps in ceremony. Torches extinguish the air thick with the scent of granite and ozone. A low tone rises, whether from chanting voices or mechanical vibration, and the chamber responds. Walls tremble gently, a pressure builds in the ears, and the stone begins to hum. Hydrogen invisible drifts above its atoms, aligning with the electric field, forming between ceiling and floor. Light flickers, faint but real, a plasma bloom at the apex, suspended like a star. For an instant, matter glows. To those who witnessed it, that light would have been sacred, the breath of creation, the fusion of earth and sky. When the reaction ends, silence returns. The tone dissolves into the granite, leaving no residue but balance. The field collapses, gently absorbed by the stone. Even now, long after the mechanism ceased, that balance remains. Every measurement, every ratio, every orientation still sings the same geometry. The pyramid's function may have faded, but its resonance has not. Archaeologists insist it was a tomb, a monument to a vanished king. But the evidence of sound proportion and precision speaks otherwise. No sarcophagus, no inscription, no ornament. Only stone and resonance. It feels less like a grave and more like an equation. A physical embodiment of balance so pure that even silence vibrates. When one leaves the chamber and steps back into the grand gallery, the air feels lighter, as though the body itself carries an echo of the tone. The pyramid has tuned you. Every cell resonates faintly with what the granite still remembers. Outside, the desert stretches endless and unbroken, yet you hear it differently now. Even the wind seems rhythmic, the horizon harmonic. That is the king's chamber's true power, not to contain a body, but to awaken one. It teaches that within silence lies sound, within stillness movement, and within stone, the memory of light. From the air, the plateau appears calm, a geometry sleeping beneath the desert sun. But seen with the eyes of pattern, it is a map of resonance, each monument, each stone a node in a network that stretches far beyond Giza. The pyramids were never meant to stand alone. They speak to each other, their alignments humming across sand and water, forming what some call a planetary lattice. When one vibrates, the others respond like tuning forks scattered across the skin of the earth. The builders seem to have known this, arranging their monuments along invisible lines that mirror the curves of the planet. From Giza to Saqqara, from Dashur to Abusir. Each complex aligns to magnetic and geodetic axes as if measuring something unseen. Satellite maps reveal these alignments, repeating at distances too precise for coincidence. 43 kilometers here, 86 there. Multiples of the same geometric constant that governs the pyramid's dimensions. It is as if the ancient architects used the Earth itself as a canvas of resonance, anchoring frequency points, like notes in a song too vast for ears. Further south in Nubia, smaller pyramids echo the same angles. In the Sinai, ruined stone mounds trace identical grids. Across the sea in Mexico, Teotihuacan's pyramids of the sun and moon share orientation within a fraction of a degree. Even in China's Shanxi province, the long-buried mounds of Xi'an align to the same cardinal geometry. Different continents, different cultures, yet the same chord of mathematics. Coincidence cannot explain a melody that plays across oceans. It is as though humanity once tuned its monuments to the same planetary frequency, an unbroken tradition of resonance spanning time and space. If the Great Pyramid was a resonator, these other sites were amplifiers. Each interacted with local geology water tables, fault lines, magnetic anomalies, feeding vibration back into the global grid. The Earth's crust became an instrument, its tectonic plates vibrating in sympathetic harmony. When solar storms struck the ionosphere, these frequencies might have stabilized the electromagnetic field, shielding the planet from imbalance. It is a grand hypothesis, monuments as a planetary nervous system, harmonizing Earth's pulse with the rhythm of the cosmos. Legends echo the same idea in mythic form. The Egyptians spoke of the net of the skylines of power cast over the world by the gods. The Chinese named them dragon lines, the Celts ley lines, the Maya paths of the sun, different words for the same unseen pattern. The belief that energy flows through the land like blood through a body, and that certain places built in harmony can tap its strength. Perhaps this was not superstition, but observation. Stone remembers vibration, and the ancients may have learned to read that memory like script. Modern instruments hint that something remains. Sensitive magnetometers detect fluctuations around the Giza complex stronger than those of surrounding terrain. At certain times of day, particularly during solar maximums, localized electromagnetic surges pulse faintly through the plateau. They coincide with measurable acoustic vibrations in the bedrock, subaudible, rhythmic, persistent. The pattern resembles a breathing cycle, the same 8 Hz pulse that hums through the king's chamber. Whatever once connected these monuments, traces of it linger. Imagine the world when these nodes were active. The pyramids glowed faintly at dusk, their polished limestone skins reflecting the final light like mirrors of the sun. Across continents, other monuments caught that glow, their angles shimmering in resonance. Energy flowed invisibly between them, not as lightning, but as harmony oscillation, uniting distant points under a single planetary hum. To stand upon one was to feel the presence of the others as if the Earth itself were awake. The ancients may have considered themselves custodians of this network, not its masters. Their rituals could have been maintenance routines, chanting tones that rebalanced frequencies, offerings that stabilized chemical reactions within the stone. When their knowledge faded, the system drifted into dormancy. Civilizations collapsed, deserts rose, rivers shifted, and the lattice fell silent. Yet the geometry remained encoded in ruins that refused to forget. Some researchers propose that the alignment of sites also correlates with anomalies in the ionosphere. Where pyramids once thrived, modern satellites record denser plasma fields, as though the atmosphere itself remembers the vibrations. These nodes might have once served to distribute charge evenly across the planet, protecting it from magnetic storms. The myth of a golden age, when the sky was calm, could be the memory of that equilibrium, a time when the Earth sang in tune with itself. If such a network existed, what was its purpose beyond stability? Perhaps it served as a communication system, not of language, but of frequency. Each monument, broadcasting resonance through the crust, carrying information as oscillation. A thought expressed as tone, a prayer written in proportion. Long before radio, before wire or code, the planet itself may have been the medium. To send a message, one built a pyramid. To receive it, one listened to the ground. It is easy to dismiss such notions as fantasy, yet they reveal a truth regardless of proof. The ancients perceived unity where we see separation. They saw energy in form, consciousness, in geometry, and music in silence. Their architecture was not built merely to endure, but to participate, to tune, to resonate, to heal. The grid they left behind, though, broken, still hums faintly beneath our cities and deserts. When wind sweeps across old stone, it awakens echoes too subtle for microphones but deep enough for hearts. Stand at Giza at midnight when the air is cold and the stars burn like frozen fire. Listen beyond the wind. The silence is not empty. It is layered. A low vibration moves through the ground, a whisper crossing continents. It carries no words, yet it speaks of connection, of balance, of memory. It may be the same song that once bound pyramids across the world, the song of the planet remembering its harmony. Perhaps one day when humanity learns again to build with listening rather than conquest, the network will stir. The pyramids will cease to be monuments to mystery and return to their purpose as instruments of resonance. Until then, they wait silent sentinels holding the frequency of a forgotten civilization, each stone a note in the global chord of the earth. And if you press your palm against the limestone and close your eyes, you might feel it, the pulse that never died. The quiet music linking all things singing still beneath the desert sand. There are nights when the sky over Giza turns strange. Not with storm or lightning, but with a subtle shimmer, a whisper of energy that ripples between the stars. The ancients might have watched such nights with reverence or fear, sensing the invisible tides that move between sun and earth. They called it the wrath of Ra, or the breath of the sky gods. We call it solar wind, invisible streams of charged particles that race from the sun, brushing the magnetic shield of the planet, stirring the ionosphere into luminous unrest. Modern science records these moments in charts and data. Yet the ancients recorded them in stone. Every chamber, every angle, every ratio of the Great Pyramid mirrors not only the geometry of Earth, but its dialogue with the heavens. When solar storms flared, the atmosphere above Egypt shimmered with energy, its electric potential rising and falling like tidewater. The pyramid standing at the exact center of the landmass of Earth might have acted as a stabilizer, a lightning rod for the planet's breath. Its limestone shell insulated, its granite heart conducted. When the ionosphere grew turbulent, the structure absorbed the excess charge, grounding it gently through its base into the aquifer below. A machine built not for conquest, but for balance. The builders may not have known the words ionosphere or plasma, but they felt the effects. Their myths speak of the day when the sky burned, of floods that followed, of lights that danced over the horizon. To them, these were divine warning signs of imbalance between heaven and earth. So they built monuments as mediators, structures that could anchor the sky to the ground. Through resonance, they sought to calm the heavens to remind the sun and earth of their ancient harmony. Imagine a storm of that age. The sun erupts in a coronal mass ejection, hurling billions of tons of charged particles toward the Earth. Days later, the planet's magnetosphere trembles. Auroras spill across latitudes, never meant to see them, green and violet curtains unfurling over the Sahara. The air thickens with static, compasses spin. Amid the chaos, the pyramids hum. Their quartz-rich cores vibrate as the electromagnetic surge sweeps across them. Hydrogen gas within their sealed chambers becomes ionized plasma, glowing faintly in the dark. The monuments come alive not in myth, but in physics, a planetary system adjusting itself. Some theorists suggest that during extreme solar events, the ionosphere collapses toward Earth, lowering the boundary between charged layers of atmosphere. The pyramids rising like antennas may have connected with this layer, releasing energy upward in arcs too subtle to burn but powerful enough to be felt. The builders may have noticed the correlation. When the sun grew angry, the monuments sang louder their frequencies, rising like alarm bells. And when the storm passed, the tone softened the hum, fading into equilibrium again. It was a dialogue, a celestial call and response. The Egyptian priests described the heavens as a sea of fire held in check by Ma'at, balance, order, truth. Perhaps the pyramids were instruments of Ma'at, built to maintain that balance when the sky itself became volatile. Their orientation to true north, their proportions matching the curvature of the earth, all served to anchor harmony. They were not defences against the gods, but reminders of law geometry imposed upon chaos. To keep the world aligned was an act of devotion. Over centuries, the sky's rhythm shifted. The Earth's magnetic poles wandered. The sun's cycles changed. The monuments still stood, but the connection weakened. Without maintenance, the harmonics faltered, and the once living network fell silent. The great storms of antiquity faded into memory, replaced by stories of divine punishment or cosmic rebirth. We inherited those myths stripped of their science, the songs of plasma rewritten as parables of light and sin. Yet traces remain. During geomagnetic storms, even today, instruments detect localized anomalies around Giza. Tiny fluctuations in atmospheric electricity, spikes in ion density. Tourists who climb the plateau at night sometimes photograph faint halos around the pyramid's apex. Bluish glows, invisible to the naked eye but captured by sensors. The phenomenon is known: coronal discharge, ionized air responding to magnetic stress. It proves nothing yet. It whispers of a memory, an echo of function long forgotten. Across cultures, similar structures echo the same pattern. The ziggurats of Mesopotamia, the step pyramids of the Americas, even the stone towers of Asia all rise under regions of frequent aurora or geomagnetic activity. It is as if the ancients built where the sky touched the earth, mapping the pressure points of the planet's field. They called these sites sacred because they felt the air itself alive, charged, humming. The monuments were not built to worship the sun, but to converse with it. When the sky rages, modern power grids falter. Satellites fall silent. Our machines dependent on wires and circuits fail under the touch of the same forces the ancients once tamed through geometry. They used stone instead of copper, proportion instead of insulation. Their technology was slow, resilient, harmonic. Where ours burns, theirs endures. Perhaps this is the true genius of the pyramids. They were designed not to resist nature, but to cooperate with it. Their resonance allowed them to flex with the planet's own frequency, absorbing excess, redistributing charge, and releasing it without harm. Like tuning pegs on a vast instrument, they kept the sky in tune with the ground. And when the song became dissonant, when the sun's voice grew too loud, they softened it, turning violence into vibration. On certain nights, when solar winds blow strongest, the desert still hums faintly. Sensitive microphones pick up subsonic waves rolling across the plateau in visible ripples in air pressure. Scientists call it microbarometry. Mystics call it remembrance. The earth is still singing, though few listen now. If you stand on the plateau during one of these nights, the stars shimmer as if breathing. A low pulse moves through your feet, matching the rhythm of your heart. The pyramid rises before you, black against the luminous horizon, its shadow trembling with faint light. For a moment, the distinction between sky and stone dissolves. The heavens descend, the earth ascends, balance returns, and the world remembers the song of Ma'at, the harmony between chaos and order, energy and stillness, sun and stone. Then dawn arrives, soft and colourless, erasing the aurora's memory. The pyramid cools its surface grey, once more. Yet deep within its granite heart, the vibration lingers quiet and constant. The builders are gone, the purpose obscured, but the system endures, waiting for the next storm, the next breath from the sun, the next moment when the planet will once again need to remember how to sing itself into peace. Across the ocean of time, another tower began to rise. Not of limestone and granite, but of steel and copper, its base in the soil of Long Island. Its crown aimed at the sky. Nikola Tesla called it Wardenclyffe. To most, it was an experiment in wireless energy, a dream of transmitting power through air. To a few, it was something more, a rediscovery of an ancient principle, the same harmony that once pulsed beneath the sands of Giza. Tesla believed the Earth itself could conduct energy, that the planet was a resonant body, vibrating like a bell struck by lightning. He envisioned his tower as both transmitter and receiver, tapping that natural rhythm and amplifying it. His notes speak of stationary waves of the Earth frequencies that circle the globe, returning endlessly upon themselves. He planned to send electricity not through wires, but through the planet's crust and the charged dome of the atmosphere. Energy would flow invisibly cleanly without loss. A global system sustained by resonance alone. He began construction in 1901. The tower rose nearly 60 meters, anchored to a foundation that reached even deeper into the ground. Its steel shaft descended into an aquifer. Yes, an aquifer. A reservoir of water beneath the soil. Just as Giza's pyramid stands above one, to Tesla, water was a conductor, a living link between the earth and the air. He spoke often of the telluric currents, natural electric flows running through the ground. He intended Wardenclyffe to awaken those currents, to turn the planet itself into a generator. Sound familiar? The Great Pyramid too drew power from below through water and vibration, transmitting it upward into the ionosphere. Two structures separated by 5,000 years, united by a single idea that Earth and sky can exchange energy through resonance. Tesla's tower, like Giza's, was aligned precisely to the cardinal directions, grounded in proportion, crowned by a spherical dome, a modern capstone for a forgotten principle. He described his invention not as a weapon or a factory, but as a living thing. He called it my magnifying transmitter. It was meant to amplify natural frequencies, not dominate them. His notes mention the Earth's resonance near 8 Hz, the same frequency detected within the king's chamber. When tuned properly, he wrote, energy would rise spontaneously from the ground like the swell of an invisible tide. From the tower's apex, that energy could leap into the sky, vibrating through the ionosphere to distant receivers. Clean power everywhere, for everyone. On summer nights, the tower glowed. Witnesses described violet arcs dancing along its ribs, faint halos of light rippling over the dome. They said it hummed a low metallic drone that shook the air without shaking the earth. Nearby instruments flickered, compasses twisted. Animals fled the sight, yet Tesla walked through the static unharmed, his clothes crackling with blue sparks. To him, it was confirmation resonance had been achieved. The earth was singing again. Wardenclyffe and Giza shared another secret, the marriage of water and vibration. Beneath both structures, aquifers conduct charge. Above both, the air ionizes when struck by resonance. In each geometry channels invisible forces using proportion as language. Tesla even referred to his tower as an electrical pyramid, though he may not have realized how literal the comparison was. Both sought equilibrium between earth and sky, the same sacred balance once personified as Ma'at. But harmony has always threatened power. Tesla's investors wanted profit, not resonance. When J.P. Morgan learned that the tower could transmit energy freely, without meters, without ownership, he withdrew funding. Construction halted in 1905. By 1917, the tower was dismantled, Its copper veins melted down for scrap, its foundation left buried in silence. Shortly after Tesla's death in 1943, the FBI seized his papers, locking them away as national secrets. The dream of global wireless energy died quietly dismissed as fantasy. Yet the echo of that dream lingers humming through every broadcast, every signal we send through the air. It is strange to think that both Tesla and the pyramid builders may have sought the same goal: to make energy a language rather than a commodity. For them, power was harmony, not control. The Great Pyramid drew from their Earth's pulse. Wardenclyffe sought to amplify it. Both turned geometry into bridge, both treated resonance as sacred law. One used stone, the other steel, yet each spoke to the same rhythm of the world. Imagine the two structures connected across time. The pyramid's resonance hums across millennia, buried under sand but not forgotten. Tesla's tower awakens on a distant shore, vibrating to the same frequency, rising and falling with the same 8 Hertz breath. Perhaps in some unseen way, they met an exchange of harmony between past and future myth and science dream and rediscovery. In his final years, Tesla wrote of a world system that would unify all nations through energy. He believed that by synchronizing the Earth's frequencies, humanity would learn peace, that dissonance in power created dissonance in people. It was an idea as old as the Nile, where priests once tuned chants to the hum of the pyramids, believing that sound could heal the soul. Science and spirituality reunited through vibration. Today, the site of Wardenclyffe is quiet. Grass grows over the buried foundation. The aquifer murmurs unseen beneath. Tourists walk past, unaware that beneath their feet lies the skeleton of a forgotten resonance. Yet at certain times when storms roll in from the Atlantic, lightning strikes near the site more often than anywhere else on the coast. The sky seems to remember what once stood there, calling for its twin across the sea. If the Great Pyramid still hums beneath the desert wind, and if the Earth still vibrates, as Tesla believed, then perhaps the network was never truly broken. Perhaps the frequency continues circling the globe in waves of silence, waiting for minds tuned finely enough to hear it. 2 monuments, 2 eras, 1 song, the ancient and the modern, the mystical and the mathematical, both reaching for the same invisible rhythm. The rhythm of the Earth itself, the note that turns chaos into harmony, distance into connection, silence into light. And though the tower is gone and the pyramid stands mute, the idea persists that energy like truth cannot be owned. It can only be heard. All it asks of us is alignment, the courage to listen, the wisdom to tune the patience, to let the planet sing again. When the Wardenclyffe Tower fell, it did not collapse in thunder. It was dismantled quietly, bolt by bolt, its steel bones lowered into crates and sold as scrap. No one recorded the sound of its silence the moment when its hum ceased. And the resonance it once carried slipped back into the ground. To most, it was just another failed experiment, the eccentric dream of a man who reached too far. But to those who listened closely, it was the same story, repeated across time. A chord of harmony struck, and then suppressed. The newspapers called Tesla a visionary, then a madman. He spoke of free energy, of endless power, drawn from the air itself, and the world turned away. Governments feared what could not be controlled. Industries feared what could not be sold. His blueprints were seized. His notes confiscated under the name of national security. Within days of his death, the FBI locked away trunks of his papers, filing them under a label that read potentially dangerous technology. The irony was perfect. The same society that electrified the night with wires and profit could not bear the thought of power without ownership. It is here that the story of Tesla and the story of the pyramids converge, not in stone or metal, but in silence. Both attempted to awaken the same resonance, a form of energy rooted in balance, not consumption. Both sought to tune humanity to the rhythm of the earth, not to conquer it. And both were met with fear. The pharaohs who followed the builders sealed the chambers, hiding their purpose behind myths of death. The financiers of the modern age tore down the tower and buried its secret beneath bureaucracy. Time changes the tools, not the reflex. Tesla himself understood suppression as part of the cycle. He once said that ideas are like the wind, they cannot be owned, only delayed. His tower was not meant to last forever. It was meant to remind the world that the planet itself is the generator, that harmony is a renewable resource. When it fell, the earth absorbed its last vibration as memory, the same way the pyramids absorbed the hum of solar storms. Both became monuments to a silenced frequency, the song of free energy, muted by the economics of fear. Imagine him standing there on that cold January night in 1943, alone in a New York hotel room, his notebooks spread across the bed. Outside, the city glowed with light born of the same electricity he had once dreamed of sharing freely. Inside, the inventor of resonance listened to the faint buzz of the city's current, the mechanical heartbeat of an age that had forgotten to listen to the earth. Perhaps in his last moments, he remembered Wardenclyffe, and beyond it, a memory deeper still, the pyramids of Giza, rising from sand like petrified harmonics. The same geometry, the same dream. Stone and steel whispering across centuries, energy should flow. After his death, his assistants were questioned, his possessions catalogued. One trunk vanished, another reappeared decades later, its contents sealed by the Office of Alien Property. Rumours bloomed that his final papers described a global oscillator, a machine that could resonate with the planet's magnetic field and tap infinite energy. To believers, this was proof that Tesla had rediscovered the ancient science of the pyramid builders. To skeptics, it was fantasy. But to history, it was pattern knowledge, uncovered, feared, and lost again. Even the few pages that survived carry phrases that sound almost like echoes of ancient Egypt. Resonant coupling, standing waves of the earth, vibration as a language. Such words would not have been foreign to those who built Giza. Their own inscriptions speak of the voice of Ra, in the stone of the breath of the earth that never dies. Different tongues, same insight. Both knew that to understand energy, one must first understand rhythm. The destruction of Wardenclyffe marked the modern equivalent of sealing a pyramid. Where priests once entombed knowledge under blocks of limestone, we bury it under bureaucracy and classified archives. We say it is for safety, but safety is another word for fear of transformation. Power that flows without control frightens those who live by control. It threatens every hierarchy built on scarcity, every empire built on need. And so we repeat the ritual, dismantle, silence, forget. Yet the resonance does not vanish. The earth remembers. Long after Wardenclyffe was dismantled, local farmers claimed their radios still picked up faint rhythmic pulses. 3 beats a pause, 3 beats again. They said it came from the ground itself, as though the buried foundations still whispered. Engineers dismissed it as interference from telegraph cables. But interference is only another word for memory. The planet was still humming, replaying the last note of Tesla's experiment. In every suppressed idea lies a ghost frequency. It haunts our machines, our myths, our dreams. When lightning flashes, when static fills a radio at midnight, we hear it faintly, the hum of what might have been. The same tone that once echoed through granite chambers now shivers in wires and satellites. Tesla's resonance and the pyramid's vibration are not separate. They are scales of the same song waiting to rejoin. Perhaps this is why stories of conspiracy persist. Not because people crave fantasy, but because they sense the unfinished chord beneath history's noise. They feel that something once aligned between sky and earth, and that we have forgotten how to hear it. Tesla's fall, the destruction of his tower, the confiscation of his notes all mirror the ancient loss at Giza knowledge, replaced by myth, science replaced by symbol. We are surrounded by the ruins of technology mistaken for mystery. But silence is never permanent. Every buried truth reverberates, seeking ears willing to listen. The pyramids still hum beneath the desert wind. Wardenclyffe's foundation still trembles when storms roll in from the Atlantic. Somewhere between them, a frequency persists, a vibration connecting what was, what is, and what will be again. It is not invention that has been lost, but permission. Permission to believe that harmony is real. If Tesla had succeeded, the world might have glowed softly at night, powered by the heartbeat of the earth itself. If the pyramid builder's science had endured, we might have grown up hearing the planet as song, not resource. But perhaps failure was necessary. Perhaps the silence itself was part of the design, because every hum needs its pause, every note its rest before the next vibration begins. The tower is gone, the pyramid endures, and still the earth waits, charged and patient. Its resonance sleeps like a heartbeat between worlds, ready for anyone who dares to listen again. The instruments are different now, the materials changed, but the principle is the same. What once hummed in stone now hums in circuitry. What once glowed above desert sand now glows behind our screens. And though the guardians of power still fear the sound of freedom, the frequency of truth is patient. It cannot be destroyed, only delayed. One day, it will return rising again from ground to sky, completing the chord that began in Egypt and ended in a silent field on Long Island. When the centuries passed and the purpose faded, the silence was rewritten. The pyramids, once instruments of resonance, became temples of death. The humming stone was renamed Sacred Tomb, the glowing chamber reimagined as passage to the afterlife. It was easier, perhaps, to fill the void of understanding with ritual than to accept that the ancients had built machines of harmony. Religion replaced resonance. Mystery replaced memory. Inside the king's chamber, where frequency once ruled priests, later saw symbolism instead of sound. The coffer became a sarcophagus. The shafts became paths for the soul. Every mark of engineering was reborn as metaphor. The pyramid ceased to sing and began to pray. The language of vibration was translated into the language of faith, and in that translation, the living science turned mythic. A machine that had once balanced earth and sky now served as a monument to power and lineage. But the stones never forgot. When archaeologists entered after millennia of darkness, their footsteps echoed strangely. The air thickened sounds stretching as if reluctant to leave. They called it acoustics, unaware that they were awakening a voice. In the flicker of lamplight, the walls seemed to breathe again. It was not imagination, it was the memory of resonance returning to form. The pyramid does not understand words. It responds only to tone. As new rulers rose, they inscribed hieroglyphs over older walls, carving prayers where once there had been equations. They filled the voids with colour, the chambers with incense. Sound became smoke, geometry became ritual. The priests entered to chant repeating syllables, older than meaning their voices, finding harmonic nodes without knowing why. They had inherited the resonance by instinct. Their rituals echoed the mechanics they no longer understood. Each chant, each rhythm mirrored the frequencies the chambers were built to amplify. Worship had replaced purpose, but the act still worked. Even forgotten science continues to function in disguise. The transformation from machine to myth was slow, patient, deliberate. It began when power shifted from builders to interpreters, from those who listened to those who declared meaning. As dynasties fell, secrecy deepened. The knowledge that stone could speak was buried beneath the certainty that gods required ceremony. What had once been interaction with the planet became intercession with heaven. And yet, under that layer of belief, the same old mathematics remained etched into every proportion. The pyramid could not lie, even when language did. Every civilization that followed repeated this pattern. The ziggurats of Sumer, the temples of India, the cathedrals of Europe, all took the blueprints of resonance and clothed them in faith. Naves replaced galleries, organs replaced echo chambers, choirs replaced oscillations. But listen carefully, and you can still hear it, the resonance of proportion that guides prayer and architecture alike. Every vaulted ceiling, every pointed arch, every dome is a memory of that first geometry. We have not abandoned the science. We have forgotten its name. In this way, the sacred and the scientific are twins born of the same impulse to connect with forces larger than ourselves. The difference lies only in language. Where the ancients spoke in frequency, we speak in faith. Both reach for harmony. Both seek to rejoin the human with the cosmic. But one remembers, the other believes. Sometimes belief hides preservation. When invaders broke into the pyramid, they took gold and idols, but left the architecture intact. They could not plunder geometry. They mistook function for ornament, thinking the structure a shell rather than a system. In misunderstanding it, they preserved it. The resonance was protected by myth. The veil of religion kept the machine alive beneath centuries of worship. Even now, the reinterpretation continues. Tourists climb the plateau to photograph what they think is a tomb, unaware that their voices revive the acoustics as they speak. Every shout, every whisper vibrates through limestone corridors, stirring ancient harmonics. The pyramid remains itself unchanged by our labels. It hums at the same frequency, whether we call it sacred or scientific. To it, words are irrelevant. Only tone matters. The misreading of purpose is not tragedy, it is cycle. Knowledge must sometimes disguise itself to survive. Had the ancients declared the pyramid an energy machine, it might have been destroyed by fear or envy, as Wardenclyffe was. By letting it pass into religion, the truth endured encoded in stone, awaiting rediscovery. Even error has its purpose when the pattern is eternal. Consider how the myths evolved. The pharaoh ascends to the stars. The pyramid becomes a stairway to heaven. The metaphors mirror the physics, the rising of hydrogen, the movement of sound, the flow of energy upward. Every sacred image is a symbolic echo of a scientific process. The ancients spoke truth through poetry, knowing that one day only metaphor would remain. They left the clues for those who could read both languages. To restore the pyramid's meaning, one must not destroy its myth, but listen through it. Faith is the shell. Resonance is the core. When we strip away belief, we hear only emptiness. But when we listen within belief, we recover tone. The structure still performs its function, even if unrecognized. Every ratio continues to vibrate. Every alignment still measures the stars. The pyramid is not waiting for understanding. It is still performing. In the moonlight, when shadows fall across its flanks, you can almost see both stories at once. The tomb and the transmitter, the shrine and the engine. They coexist, one visible, one felt. Perhaps they always did. Perhaps there is no contradiction at all. A machine can be holy. A ritual can be scientific. In the end, everything that aligns with harmony is sacred, and so the redefinition of purpose becomes the preservation of purpose. By calling it a tomb, humanity unknowingly protected the oldest song of the earth. The pyramid stripped of worship would have fallen silent long ago. Instead, its myth kept it alive. Now it stands again between world stone and symbol science and soul, waiting for the listener who can hear both. When that listener arrives, the pyramid will need no translation. Its vibration will be the same as it always was, an unbroken tone between sky and ground. And in that instant, tomb and temple will dissolve, leaving only resonance, the true language of the gods, the first and last religion of stone. Every silence contains an aftersound, a resonance that refuses to die. After the rituals faded and the gods lost their names, the stones continued to hum. Travelers who camped near Giza in the centuries after its abandonment wrote of strange noises at night, a deep vibration that seemed to come from the ground. They blamed the wind or ghosts or the hollow chambers beneath, but none could explain why the tone pulsed with such regular rhythm. It was not haunting, it was remembering. Even in dormancy, the pyramid still performed its duty, releasing pressure between the earth and sky. By the time modern archaeologists arrived, the purpose had become myth twice removed. They measured, excavated, debated. Some heard the echo of machinery, others only superstition. Yet the evidence, though scattered, whispered of something more deliberate. Magnetized granite channels smoothed as though by fluid residues of acid and zinc in sealed shafts. Each finding dismissed each anomaly, explained away until the anomalies formed a pattern too consistent to ignore. Still, the academic world remained cautious. To admit the pyramid might once have resonated as an energy device would blur the border between science and mystery, and that is the one frontier modernity fears to cross. But the echoes persist. In the 1990s, sensitive microphones detected low-frequency waves emanating from the pyramid's base. They were not seismic. They did not match any known natural source. They came at 8 Hz, the same frequency that Tesla measured, the same that fills the king's chamber. The Schumann resonance, the Earth's heartbeat, still flows through Giza, as it always has. The pyramid, even stripped of casing stones and inner conductivity, still participates in the planet's vibration. A monument that outlives its function is not dead. It is dreaming. Some scientists returned with electromagnetic sensors measuring small but persistent fields around the apex. During solar storms, those readings spiked, hinting at residual conductivity. Perhaps the granite core retains charge. Perhaps the limestone still acts as insulator. A system can sleep for millennia and yet retain its memory of current, the same way a struck bell holds tone long after the mallet is gone. The pyramid is a bell the Earth struck once and has been ringing ever since. We continue to rebuild what we once knew. Our skyscrapers mimic its slope for wind resistance. Our antennas mirror its alignment. Even our data centers, cooled and grounded in vast concrete shells, resemble the inner chambers of Giza. Technology. It seems circles back to its origins. Unknowingly, we have reconstructed fragments of that old design, translating stone resonance into signal transmission. What once hummed through quartz now hums through silicon. Energy changed its skin, not its essence. The same echo can be traced through architecture and language alike. The cathedrals of medieval Europe were tuned by masons who knew nothing of Egypt, yet repeated its geometry ratios of golden mean arches scaled to resonate with the human voice. They built to amplify prayer, not electricity, but the vibration was identical. Every Gregorian chant is a distant descendant of the king's chamber tone. Every bell tower is a reflection of the grand gallery's slope. The resonance survives disguised as devotion. Our machines too have inherited that lineage. Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower was the pyramid reborn, its foundation sunk in water, its crown in air. Today, our satellites orbit like floating capstones, transmitting energy through invisible fields. We have surrounded the planet with our own artificial ionosphere of frequencies, a metallic echo of what the ancients achieved organically. We call it progress, but perhaps it is remembrance. We are relearning to make the earth sing even if we no longer hear the melody. The question that remains is not whether the pyramid generated power, but what kind of power it sought. Electricity is crude compared to harmony. The ancients may have understood that energy is only useful when it restores balance, Every oscillation of the pyramid, every wave of resonance might have acted as therapy for the planet. A geophysical song keeping Earth's magnetism steady, calming the ionosphere after solar storms. What we call myth might once have been maintenance. There are stories from priests of Heliopolis that speak of the day when the sky fell silent. They wrote that the gods withdrew their voice and the world became heavy. Perhaps that was the day the resonance failed, the day imbalance returned. Without its tone, the earth grew restless. Climates shifted. Memory fragmented. Civilizations rose on fragments of the old frequency, mistaking it for divinity, never realizing it was simply harmony lost. The desert guards its memory well. Beneath the dunes, beneath layers of sand and salt, the old channels still exist. Limestone conduits, sealed shafts, fragments of quartz that glint when lightning strikes nearby. Every storm that sweeps across the plateau recharges the circuit for an instant, awakening faint luminescence in the air. Pilots flying overhead sometimes report static in their radios, a hum that fades as quickly as it begins. The pyramid speaks for a breath, then falls quiet again. It is the language of stone remembering how to sing. We live in an age that values noise over tone, signal over silence. Yet every frequency we broadcast passes through that same desert air, brushing the surface of the pyramid like wind over an old instrument. It responds invisibly, perhaps imperceptibly, vibrating in sympathy. The digital pulses of our civilization travel through the same electromagnetic sea, the ancients once tuned by proportion alone. Our technology, for all its brilliance, remains an imitation of resonance without understanding. Perhaps that is the final lesson of Giza, that the true power of vibration is not in control, but in alignment. When a tone matches the world, it requires no force to move mountains. The pyramid stands as proof. It does not act. It allows. It does not consume. It channels. It teaches that harmony is the most efficient form of energy, that silence can sustain more than sound. In the moonlit stillness of the plateau, the monument no longer shines with casing stone, yet it glows in another way. Its proportions reflect starlight into perfect symmetry, a geometry that hums softly to those who stand near its base and close their eyes. If you listen without expectation, you may hear the same low tone that the ancients once followed, a note older than language, fainter than wind. It asks nothing, promises nothing. It simply continues, the aftersound of a forgotten civilization still resonating through time. And if you follow that sound inward, past the noise of your own thoughts, you might discover that the frequency never left at all. It merely shifted into the quiet pulse of your own heartbeat. There comes a moment somewhere between dusk and night when the Great Pyramid almost disappears. Its sharp edges blur into the horizon. Its mass seems to dissolve into the desert air. The last light glances off its flanks, and for a heartbeat, the monument no longer looks solid. It looks like vibration given shape. This is the hour the builders must have loved most, when form becomes frequency, and frequency form again. The time when the pyramid remembers that it was never truly stone, only resonance slowed into matter. Every civilization leaves behind an echo. For Egypt, it was the hum of geometry. The stones still align with the cardinal points, still mirror Orion and Sirius, as they did 5,000 years ago. The sky has shifted, but the pyramid does not care. It continues to orient itself to the universe as if the Earth's slow rotation were part of its pulse. Its orientation is its meditation, unmoving, unwavering, patient. A stillness that hums louder than any sound. The desert changes each year, swallowing and revealing in equal measure. Yet the pyramid remains the fixed note in a song of wind. Even eroded, its ratios hold. Even cracked, its resonance endures. Tourists come and go, touching its stones, taking photographs, leaving footprints that the wind erases within hours. But beneath all the transience, the vibration continues humming beneath the sand, rippling through the aquifer, climbing through granite veins toward the vanished capstone. Every whisper, every footstep, every heartbeat that crosses the plateau adds itself to the frequency. The pyramid listens. Some nights, scholars gather to measure its pulse. They place instruments along the base and record subsonic tremors pulses too low to hear, but strong enough to feel. They find patterns that repeat every 12 hours, every day, every lunar month, the same cycles the ancients charted in their calendars. It is as if the pyramid still keeps time marking the planet's respiration. They call it coincidence, but coincidence that persists for millennia begins to sound like intention. The pyramid is a clock that does not measure hours, it measures harmony. The builders may have known this was their true immortality, not names carved in cartouches, not treasures sealed in stone, but resonance frequency as legacy. A vibration can outlive language belief, even memory. It is the simplest form of permanence. The pharaohs built their likenesses in granite so their souls could live forever, but it is the geometry, not the name, that survived. Long after we forget the kings, we will still hear the hum. In the quiet of the inner chambers, that hum feels alive. Even stripped of hydrogen, stripped of casing, stripped of faith, the air still moves with invisible rhythm. It is a slow oscillation, an inaudible breath that rises from the floor and fades into the ceiling. Scientists call it pressure differential. Mystics call it spirit. Both are right. The pyramid unites them by existing. Every myth that followed the flood, the tower, the ladder to heaven, was an echo of this truth. The pyramid taught that connection is the highest technology. It joined earth and sky matter and light, human and divine. When its function ended, the world fractured. Energy became property, knowledge became hierarchy. But the pattern remains dormant in the mind of anyone who listens. It waits to be rediscovered, not through excavation, but through alignment. Perhaps that is why the pyramid continues to draw us back. We pretend to study it, to date its stones, to decode its purpose. But beneath all our theories is a longing, a subconscious recognition that something inside us once knew this language. When we stand before it, we feel the same pull. The builders must have felt that soft magnetism of proportion and silence. It reminds us that we are not outside the pattern, but part of it, resonating unknowingly with the same frequency we forgot how to hear. The wind moves differently here. It carries fine sand that whispers across the face of the monument, polishing it grain by grain. That erosion is not destruction, it is continuation. Each grain removes dust. Each gust clears memory, allowing the pyramid to breathe again. Erosion is the planet's way of keeping rhythm, of making sure no tone grows stale. Even decay in the scale of eternity is music. As darkness deepens, stars rise above the plateau. Orion climbs the horizon, its belt aligning once more with the three pyramids, a constellation of intention. The same arrangement that guided the builders still hovers above their work, unchanged, indifferent, perfect. Light from those stars left before we were born and still travels toward us, carrying information across centuries of distance. Every photon that touches the pyramid's face becomes part of its frequency energy, transforming into memory, into stone. The monument absorbs the cosmos and returns it as silence. That silence is not emptiness, it is balance. One could say the pyramid no longer functions, but perhaps it functions exactly as intended. It was never meant to run forever, only to prove that harmony could be made tangible, that matter could hold music, that energy could be peace. Its endurance is its lesson. It demonstrates that resonance does not die when the system sleeps. It lingers, waiting to be awakened by attention. The world still turns on its axis, the ionosphere still hums, the water beneath still flows. Every element of the old equation remains. All that is missing is recognition. If one were to rebuild it, not in stone, but in understanding, perhaps the frequency would return. Perhaps humanity would learn again what the builders already knew, that technology and spirituality are not opposites but phases of the same wave. When the two align, the earth itself sings, not as metaphor, not as myth, but as resonance made real. At midnight, when the wind stills and the desert cools, the pyramid becomes invisible again. The stars above mirror its angles. The ground beneath trembles softly, like a drum remembering the hand that once struck it. The universe breathes, the stones vibrate, and for one eternal second, everything sky-earth thought silence aligns. No light, no sound, no time, only harmony. That is the final secret of the Great Pyramid. It was never built to last forever. It was built to remind forever. And even now, as we sleep, it continues to do so, an ancient chord, still vibrating through the skin of the world, a frequency so deep, it can only be heard by those who have forgotten how to listen.